Our next gentleman, our next speaker, Mr. Rick Ward, is a retired law enforcement officer, retired naval officer, a veteran. Thank you very much for that part especially. And recently retired after 6 years instructing and certifying over 3,000 enhanced permit holders. He's been a champion of our gun rights and legislation. He was the plaintiff in the very controversial Supreme Court case against judges regarding the carrying of guns in courthouses, which he will update us on now. Ladies and gentlemen, a champion of the Second Amendment, Mr. Rick Ward.
Thank y'all very much. I hate to come behind all these great speakers. I'm not a great speaker at all, but my great friend over here, Vince Thornton, called me a few days ago and asked me if I'd come and speak to you about the update on this Supreme Court case and where it's going now. I want to start out by telling you from the very beginning, in 2010, we didn't have a law called enhanced carry. What we had was just a basic permit law, and that permit prevented us from going into so many places it really wasn't even worth having. So what these men behind us over here in the legislature decided on is, you know, it's probably because we don't want you to go in government buildings and other buildings like that. We want you to, because you hadn't had training. Because what happened was for a basic permit, it didn't require any training. All it required was you apply for the permit and run a background check, and then you get the permit. So they were limited on where they wanted us to go. Well, in 2011, they decided to put us in a specific category called enhanced permit holders. And what that meant was that you could go and take 8 hours of training from an individual approved by the Mississippi Highway Patrol. And after that point, you could go into a whole lot more places. All those places, there were about 20 of them in the statute that we couldn't go, included government buildings and so forth. So when the legislature decided, okay, well, if you take the training, we'll give you these extra places you can go to. So we all started doing that. A lot of people started instructing, as I did. I was number 53. Now there's about 900 instructors. But I look that old. I've been through law enforcement. I've been through the military. I've been through this type of training. I retired from all that stuff. One thing I hadn't retired from, and that's protecting your gun rights. Yay. And I'm going to make sure that I keep on doing that until the last breath from my body goes away. I've had to fight like you wouldn't believe. I've worn these hallways out behind me. I've worn the phones out to these people that are voting for our gun laws. I've defeated a lot of them that never got passed, that they tried their best to get passed. And I've also gotten a lot of them passed that should have been passed. And we only had one get through this year, and I think it was one that we needed. But the problem is we have people who like to over-exercise their authority, judges in particular. So what happened was in 2014, House Bill 314 was passed because we had people like the County Board of Supervisors, we had the mayors, the aldermen, and so forth that saying, you're not coming in City Hall with a gun, you're not coming in the courthouse with a gun, and so forth and so on. Well, when House Bill 506 was passed in 2011 to give us enhanced permit, it specifically said we could carry into a courthouse. Well, you might not care about going into courthouses, but if you go online and do searches of courthouse shootings, in every case, every single case where a gun was used inside a courthouse, inside the courthouse, it belonged to a deputy. It was taken from the deputies. It wasn't a gun permit holder, it wasn't an enhanced permit holder, it was taken from a deputy. We've only had about 18 courthouse assaults since 1995. And we've got over 3,600 county courthouses in the country. So that's not that many, but in every case of these guns taken from the deputies in courthouses, it also involved a private citizen being shot or shot at or held at gunpoint or taken hostage. So if most of you have been in the courthouses and you see the type of people that are guarding the courthouses, I highly respect older people, but sometimes it's time to go home. When my dad and granddad was in their upper ages of life, they had accomplished a lot in life, but they couldn't do it anymore when it came to a certain point. And so it may be time to go home, but what they tend to do is hire elderly people or badly obese people or sickly people or whatever. One of the newspaper agencies did a public records search here in Hinds County about 4 years ago to find out the qualifications of the bailiffs in the courthouse that were supposed to protect us. And 6 of them out of, I think it was 13 or 14, 6 of them had not qualified with their firearms, but they were still carrying their firearms. And the sheriff's department and the judges knew that they had not qualified. So is that the person you want to protect your life? Or like Vince said, or you want to defend your own life? I personally want to defend my own life. I'm that way with driving a car. I won't ride with my wife. I got to drive myself. Some of y'all probably feel the same way. But I prefer to protect my own life, and that's probably the only person I want to put my hands in, my life in my hands. But when these judges decided, well, we'll fix that for you aldermen and you boards of supervisors and sheriffs and so forth, we're going to fix it for you. What we're going to do, we're exempt from the lawsuit and we can't be sued for it. Only thing they can do is take us to the Supreme Court. Now, who in the world is going to do that? Nobody's going to take us to the Supreme Court. And there were 200 judges that said that across the state. Well, guess what? I walked into the Lowndes County Courthouse with my gun on, not knowing if I was going to be arrested or turned away or whatever, but I was definitely going to be turned away, at least as a minimum. I wasn't going to leave my gun in the car. Guess how many guns get stolen around here all the time? The numbers are outrageous. And they got signs on the front of a building that says no guns allowed. So you pull up there and you don't see that at first, and then you see it and you go back and put the gun in your car and you come back and your gun's gone. Or you come back and your car's gone. So I'm not going to give mine up. So when I stepped in that door of Lowndes County Courthouse, not knowing what was happening, I said, one way or the other, we're going to find out, we're going to take these judges to task. And I had already talked to an attorney that I'd started junior college with in the late 70s under the Vietnam GI Bill. I talked to him, he agreed to take the case. If we had to, we'd take it to the Supreme Court. Well, we filed, they denied me entry. I filed a motion to ask them to revise or rescind the order that they had prohibiting us from coming in the courthouse, which was a violation of the statute these men behind us passed. And they didn't even answer my motion. So then I filed another motion later on and I asked them for a hearing. They didn't answer that one either. About 2 months later, they issued another order denying my motions. So I had no choice whatsoever but to go to the Supreme Court. And that's what I did. Went to the Supreme Court, sat over there for about 1.5 years. Didn't get any attention that I'm aware of. And then the next thing you know, we won the case. The Supreme Court, I say we won it, I want to qualify that in a minute. It came out, it was Justice Randolph who wrote the opinion, and it was outstanding. I mean, he threw buckets of whatever you can think of on these judges. He laid it on them. The problem was there were other justices on the Supreme Court. And if you recall, Justice Waller, who's now a gubernatorial candidate, was our leader in that organization. And he was leading the Supreme Court, and I don't know why he gave it to Judge Randolph, but nonetheless he did, and Judge Randolph is now the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Wrote an outstanding opinion. But then when the other judges got a hold of it, including Justice Waller, they did everything you could possibly think of to confuse the situation. And there were 6 of them out of 9 that wrote opinions, dissenting opinions that we really don't agree with what Judge Randolph said. And basically, the judges should be able to decide to do anything they want to do, period. No limitations. Judge Randolph had said that the judge's authority stopped at the courtroom door. And the law that gave us the authority to carry it inside the courthouse did not give us the authority to carry it inside the courtroom, nor did we want it. I don't even think there ought to be a gun in a courtroom. Out of all the shootings that's taken place, there's been 4 of them that's taken place since 2005, and of all those shootings, as I said, they all happened as a result of the deputy's guns. Well, if the deputy didn't have a gun in there, how would that have happened? Maybe they should have had tasers instead of guns. And maybe the judge should have a gun. I don't know, but at any rate, we didn't have any desire whatsoever to carry a gun in the courtroom. So now what these judges decided is we think that the judge's courtroom is whatever he wants it to be. And a judge in Lee County came out and said, our entire courthouse is now our courtroom, so we can defeat this law. So now you can't carry a gun in the courthouse like the legislature said you can. Well, that was ridiculous. I mean, think about this for a second. Say you had to go to the bathroom. You're about to drown. Drank too much water. Well, could you go up before the judge's podium and relieve yourself of that water? No. But you got to do it in the bathroom. But wait a minute, the whole courthouse is now their courtroom, so why not? And that's the point I tried to make with the judges. They threw me out. But we've continued to fight that situation even after the court decision was rendered. And the main reason I think Ben's wanting me to bring you up to date on this, because at least one, and the leader of that group, is a gubernatorial candidate. I have recently started a Facebook page called, what is it? Robert, Mr. Robert, you know what it is?
Gun rights.
Gun rights governor. And that's what we want, a gun rights governor. Now we've got a problem in selecting one though, and the first thing that I did is I have evaluated Jim Hood. Go ahead and get the Democrat out of the way. I used to say it didn't matter what party you were from, you vote for the person, but in every case where a Democrat has introduced a bill on gun legislation, it's always been a gun control bill. With Republicans, it's always a gun rights bill. Which ones do we want? You know? So I have evaluated Jim Hood, and the reason I'm saying, there's 3 people that I am evaluating right now. And I've just finished with Jim Hood. Tomorrow I'm going to try to finish with Mr. Waller. He came from a fine family. I think he's a fine man, but I don't think he's the gun rights person we're looking for. He was in the Supreme Court for 20 years. The last 10 years of it, he was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in a leadership position. You won't find anything in his background or anything in his decisions that had to do with gun rights except my case. And he didn't even agree with the person he appointed to write the opinion. So I'm not a real happy camper when it comes to that. His son is my dermatologist, and again, I knew his dad, they're good people. But I want the right person in the job who has a history of doing things for us, and that's going to be a problem. Because what we're looking at, we've already evaluated him. I'll start evaluating Mr. Waller tomorrow, then Tate Reeves, and I've had a number of people who have asked me to take a look at Robert Foster. I didn't initially do that because I don't know anything about Robert Foster. I know what it says on TV, on the radio, in the newspaper, on the internet, and so forth, probably like most of you do, and everybody can conclude that he's a very nice man. How many nice men have you talked to, though, that's told you something before if they were running for office and they went ahead and did what they told you they were going to do when they got there? Has anybody ever experienced that problem where they didn't do what they said they were going to do? So my concern is we need to try to find somebody, if we can, out of the small pool that we have, that will represent our best interest in the gun community. Somebody who's got a record of doing that. And I'm not sure we're going to find it. I hope we do. But I'm doing one at a time. So please, if you go on the site, Gun Rights Governor, please stick with who we're evaluating at that time. I feel bad. I got to apologize to Mr. Robert over here. Here's a man over here with oxygen on, I think, and a wheelchair, and I threw him off of my site yesterday. No, I didn't throw him off. I didn't exactly throw him off, but I deleted things that didn't have to do with, or I didn't think had to do with Jim Hood, and I was probably a little overly aggressive on that, and I'm going to take care of him. He's a good man. I've spoken for him before down in Hattiesburg. But at any rate, if y'all would like to go to that and sign up to the page, we've gotten 361 members in 2 days. So it's picking up. And I know y'all are having a problem with membership. When I first became a Mason, the gentleman that worked with me on my degrees told me, he said, show me an organization without the youth, and I'll show you a dying organization. And you can read that in 2 different ways, but it's true. So we need to get out there the best we can and try to get the youth in here. If you don't think people listen to youth, look at that 29-year-old socialist female that we got in New York right now. I mean, nobody can get enough of her that's of that opinion. I'm certainly not in favor of her at all, but at any rate, that's what the youth can do for you. They can drive people to the organization. The last thing I want to tell you is that one of the things that Mr. Waller did say when they rendered that opinion is that this was really a problem that needed to be resolved by the legislature. So when the legislature met this time, we introduced Bill 1581, House Bill 1581, and it spelled it out. It didn't say the judges have all the authority they want. One of the things they want is they wanted to be able to control the whole courtroom or the whole courthouse or the whole floor that they're on and so forth, to include hallways and corridors and whatever. Under this new law that was passed, and I was up here beating their doors down days at a time on that, what it says is that it does not include hallways. We're having a problem in Harrison County right now. The second floor is where all the courtrooms are, and the sheriff said we can't go up there because the hallways grant you access to the courtroom. Well, this statute specifically prohibits them designating a hallway as part of the courtroom. And that doesn't go into effect until July 1st. I'll say one good thing about the judges in the Northeast District, who were the world's worst, by the way, initially. They have all but one decided to comply with the law as written today. Actually, the day that it was signed into effect, signed by the governor. So they're not waiting until July 1st, so good for them. But there are some that are. We have problems in Harrison County. We still have a problem in Lowndes County. And we're having a problem, I understand, over in Natchez. In some cases, they want to let an enhanced permit holder in, but they want to follow you around, assign a deputy to follow you around like you're a criminal. And we're dealing with that issue right now, too. But I'm there. I'm constantly there to fight them. If anybody wants to write down my email address, please send me an email anytime you have a problem, know a problem, and I'll be glad to get involved in it. I have written 31 complaints that were all justified to the State Attorney General regarding counties and cities limiting us from our carrying guns in courthouses and city buildings and county buildings. 31 complaints, and I filed 3 lawsuits, and I've gone to the Supreme Court once. Probably about to go again. But I'll be glad, like I said, I'll be there to fight for your rights as long as I'm alive when it has to do with gun rights. And if anybody wants to contact me, it's rickward47@hotmail.com. That's rickward47@hotmail.com. And if you're on Facebook, please go to the page, the group that I mentioned earlier, Gun Rights Governor. That's what we want to try to find. I need your help in doing it. I'm not recommending anybody. I'm simply laying out the facts about each candidate, and hopefully we can come to a consensus. I know we're not all going to agree, but hopefully we can come to a consensus to get behind one. Thank y'all very much.
Is there anybody here who doesn't know me? Is there anybody here who doesn't know me? Well, I'm going to dispense with my bio then. I want to say this. The tenets of socialism that have been spoken here are the serious ones. There are many others, but they'll use your money, they'll keep us from protecting ourselves. The next most worst egregious situation is our health care. We know that Obamacare was abominable. It still is abominable. It's costing our country billions of dollars every year, and it should be gone by now. But I'm here to tell you that there is hope about health care in America. And I have an expensive speech. I don't want to talk to you about it through the whole thing because we've been here a long time. But I'm going to tell you this. There are people in Congress and there are physicians who are working with these people in Congress and the Trump administration to fix our health care. I'm going to give you a very short summary of the ways that they're going to do it. Their goals are to reassert consumer choice. That means that you get a choice of how you want to take care of your health care. They want to bring back affordability, and they're going to do that through a number of ways. They want to bring back the private market. Now, Bernie Sanders is going to tell you that Medicare for All will essentially do away with private insurance, except for nose jobs and ears jobs. They want to bring stability to the market and how we buy our health care. And they're going to do that by making institutions accountable for upholding the law that they want to bring to us. They want portability. The portability health care should be accessible to everyone, not as a right, but as a desirable, necessary, and important part of your life. Therefore, you have to pay for it to some extent. We know that people who receive things for free don't really appreciate how valuable it is. Once you have skin in the game, once it's your health care, you will try to fight to protect it. The proposal assures stability and predictability to the insurance and returns to the rule of law. That means every state is going to be empowered to take care of the health care that their citizens enjoy. Since this will be a product you purchase, it belongs to you, it's an entity that you own, much like your 401k. It is portable even if you move, change jobs, or lose your jobs. This plan would have the same tax advantages as employers now have, and as a feature in the past. They want to bring protection to it. Health care should be accessible to everyone, including people who have pre-existing conditions. Now, when Obama became president in 2009, many of you may know that many of the states, in fact most of the states, over 40%, over 60% of the states were putting together high-risk pools. And those high-risk pools were essentially developed so that people with pre-existing conditions will be protected when unforeseen abnormalities, unforeseen problems occur in your life. One of the most serious problems that affects our health care is the broken malpractice systems across the states. Many of you may remember that we had a judge, I believe it was in Neshoba County, who was giving unbelievably expensive rewards for people who are filing frivolous lawsuits about health care. They are working diligently to figure out a way to do that. I have the particulars and I'll be happy to send it to you, or just contact me, either phone me or give me an email, send me an email. And some of these, these are some of the features that are being worked on in a better healthcare system for all of Americans, so I ask you to stay abreast in the coming year because they're working on it. And it's going to be one of the main planks that President Trump will be talking about as an opposition to Medicare for All. That is extensive, that talk that I had. But this one is much more important. This is the closing. About a year ago, a man by the name of Dr. Jack Minzy on the Civil War in the U.S. today. Have you all noticed that we're in a civil war? Let me explain it to you a little bit. He passed away Sunday, the 8th of April, 2018. Professionally, Jack was head of the Department of Education at East Michigan University, as well as a prolific author of numerous books, most of which were on the topic of education and the government role therein. This is the last of his works, and he named it Civil War. How do civil wars happen? Two or more sides disagree on who runs the country, and they can't settle the question through elections because they don't even agree the elections are how you decide who's in charge. Let me say that first sentence again. Two or more sides disagree on who runs the country. When you stop accepting election results, you have a countdown to civil war. The Mueller investigation is about removing President Trump from office and overturning the results of an election. We all know that. But it is not the first time that they have done this. The first time a Republican president was elected this century, they said he really didn't win. The Supreme Court gave him the election. There's a pattern there. What do sure odds of the Democrats rejecting the next Republican president really mean? It means they don't accept the results of an election that they don't win. It means they don't believe that transfers of power in this country are determined by election. That's a civil war. And that's where we find ourselves. Because I can tell you, the bureaucrats who work in Washington have pledged their allegiance to the Democrat Party, which is why Barack Obama still goes throughout the world telling the people how sorry he is that America is the way it is. And he keeps downplaying how important he was, downplaying how important he thought he was. This isn't dissent, it isn't disagreement. You can hate the other party, you can think they're the worst thing that ever happened to the country, but then you work harder to win the next election. When you consistently reject the results of elections that you don't win, what you want is a dictatorship. Your very own dictatorship. The only legitimate exercise of power in this country, according to Democrats, is its own. Whenever Republicans exercise power, it's inherently illegitimate in their eye. The Democrats lost Congress. They lost the White House. So what did they do? They began trying to run the country through federal judges and bureaucrats, and they are still doing it. Be not deceived, they are still doing that. Every time that a federal judge issues an order saying that the President of the United States can't scratch his own back without his say-so, that's civil war. Our system of government is based on the Constitution, but that's not the system that runs the country. The Democrat system is that any part of government that it runs gets total and unlimited power over the country. If the Democrats are in the White House, then the president can do anything, and I mean anything. He can have his own amnesty for illegal aliens. He can fine you for not having health insurance. His power is unlimited. He's a dictator. Did any of you think that when Mr. Obama was still in office?
Yes.
But when Republicans get into the White House, suddenly the president can't do anything. He isn't even allowed to undo the illegal alien amnesty that his predecessor illegally invented. A Democrat in the White House has discretion to completely decide every aspect of immigration policy. A Republican doesn't even have the discretion to reverse him. Now that's how the game is played. That's how our country is run and is being run. Sad but true, although the left hasn't yet won that particular fight. When a Democrat is in the White House, states aren't even allowed to enforce immigration law. But when a Republican is in the White House, states can only create their own immigration laws. Under Obama, a state wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom without asking permission, but under Trump, Jerry Brown can go around saying that California is an independent republic and sign treaties with other countries. And be not deceived, his successor, Gavin Newsom, is doing exactly that. The Constitution has something to say about that. Whether it's federal or state, executive, legislative, or judiciary, the left moves power around to run the country. If it controls an institution, then that institution is suddenly the supreme power in the land. This is what I call a moving dictatorship. Donald Trump has caused the shadow government to come out of hiding. Professional government is a guild, like medieval guilds. You can't serve in it if you're not a member, and if you haven't been indoctrinated into their arcane rituals. If you aren't in the club, and Trump isn't in the club, he brought a bunch of people who are in the club with him. Now we're seeing what the pros do when amateurs try to walk in on them. They spy on them, they investigate them, and they send them to jail. They use the tools of power to bring them down. That's not a free country. It's not a free country when FBI agents who support Hillary take out an insurance policy against Trump winning the election. It's not a free country when Obama officials engage in massive unmasking of the opposition. It's not a free country when the media responds to the other guy winning by trying to ban the conservative media that supported him from social media. It's not a free country when all of the above collude together to overturn an election because the guy who wasn't supposed to win did. Have no doubt, we are in a civil war between conservative volunteer government and a leftist Democrat professional government. I hope you pass this message around, and I'll be happy to send you the copy of the whole thing. I'm going to ask you one more time. Please stand for America. Please ask the Lord to bless our country. Please get him to have power over those who would subvert our world. We established this as the greatest country in the history of the world. We love this country. We love our Constitution. We love our Declaration of Independence. We need more active participants to uphold the laws of this land and to support the next President of the United States. But we need to support the present President today. Thank you, and good afternoon. And that concludes our talk. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you so much.
Can we still see you in Facebook with your baby?
Yeah, thank you for coming. Good to see you.